Not every 911 call stems from danger. Sometimes they're simply born out of arrogance and the fear of being replaced. That afternoon, the Texas sky cast a brilliant blue blanket over the Willow Creek Heights neighborhood. Peaceful, quiet, and, to some, orderly. Mr. Raymond Doyle, 62 years old, white, sipped his coffee while observing from his second-floor balcony. His gaze stopped when he noticed a black woman in a blue swimsuit, her hair intricately braided, gracefully passing through the pool gate. She wasn't in a hurry. She didn't look nervous. There was no sign that she didn't belong there, and that precisely was what unsettled Raymond. He set his coffee cup down, his lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't need to ask. He just knew. She didn't live here. That walk, that confidence, didn't fit the mold of the proper residence he was used to. In Raymond's mind, the story had already been written: an outsider, a black woman, illegally using community property. So he called 911, not hurriedly, not in a panic. His voice was steady, the voice of a man convinced he was doing the right thing. "Yes, I'm reporting a trespass. A black woman, unknown identity, using the community pool without authorization." He stood there waiting. Waiting for order to be restored. Waiting for the police to come, to cuff her, to prove that everything was still in its rightful place, just as he had always believed. But what he didn't know was, the old order was about to be shattered. 10 minutes later, a police SUV pulled up. 2 white officers stepped out and made their way toward the pool. Raymond smirked. Let's see how she explains this one. But the woman didn't panic. She calmly dried her hands, stood up, and said just one sentence. "I don't live here. I own this place." Raymond froze. And when she presented the documents proving her ownership of the entire Willow Creek Heights complex, the entire neighborhood fell into a stunned silence. No one spoke. No one dared. Because the so-called order Raymond had clung to for 30 years was torn apart with a single sentence. There are some women who, when they enter a room, make the whole space fall silent. Not because of showiness, not because of surface-level power, but because they carry something invisible, heavier than gold, an undeniable presence. Celeste Harper, 39, was one of those women. The daughter of a welder and a petite nurse, Celeste grew up in the weathered Edgewood neighborhood of Atlanta, a place where big dreams were often crushed by small bank account numbers. But Celeste was different. She learned how to turn every setback into fuel. She learned how to make doors that slammed in her face, swing wide open under the sheer weight of her success. And today, under the scorching Georgia sun, Celeste wanted nothing more than to savor a simple moment. A lounge chair by the pool, an unfinished book. An afternoon without meetings, without emails, without phones shrieking for attention, just to breathe. Wearing an emerald green swimsuit, Celeste's brown skin glowed under the sunlight, as if sculpted from living metal. Her braided hair was pulled into a low, neat bun, practical yet graceful. She slipped into the cool water, her fingers trailing lightly across the surface, sending ripples outward, as if even the world itself softened before her. Yet peace, for people like Celeste, always came with conditions. A glance, a sideways stare, the slam of a window shutting on the second floor. She sensed it instantly. A lifetime of sharpened instincts had taught her to recognize when she was being watched, when her mere existence became an inconvenience in someone else's eyes. From the balcony of Unit 2B, a pair of squinting, scrutinizing eyes locked onto her. No greeting, no polite inquiry. Just a silent judgment. She doesn't belong here. Celeste took a long, steady breath, keeping her heartbeat even. She was no stranger to that kind of look. The look of people who thought her skin color required permission, who believed her presence needed justification. But they would soon learn one thing. Celeste Harper didn't ask for permission to exist. She needed no approval. She was the change they could no longer stop. Some people age with wisdom. Others, like Robert Hale, simply accumulate bitterness. At 68, Robert Hale was what Maplewood Grove proudly referred to as a founding resident, someone who had lived there long enough to believe he owned not just his house, but the unwritten rules of the entire community. His bright red Hawaiian shirt billowed over his swollen belly, his flip-flops slapped rhythmically against the pavement, and with every step, Robert seemed to declare, "I have the right to decide who belongs here and who doesn't." And today, in his eyes, a grave violation was unfolding. A black woman, relaxed and confident, was enjoying the pool, which he considered his own private backyard. Robert marched over. No greeting, no polite inquiry. He pointed directly at Celeste, as if she were a system error that needed immediate correction. "Hey, you're not allowed here!" His voice boomed loud enough to catch the attention of several nearby balconies. Celeste removed her swimming goggles, her cold gaze sliding over him, not avoiding, not submitting, but with absolute control. "Excuse me, are you speaking to me?" Robert puffed up, as if her calm defiance were a personal insult. "You heard me. This pool is for residents only. People like you don't belong here." The words, "people like you," dropped into the air like a stone into a still lake. Ripples spread, silent, sharp, inevitable. Celeste's lips curved slightly, half a smile, half a silent pity. "Do you even know who I am?" Robert let out a derisive snort, thick with contempt. "No." "I know your kind. Always sneaking in. Always trying to worm your way into places you don't belong. You climbed over the fence, didn't you?" The sunlight caught the bloodshot red of Robert's eyes, revealing every wrinkle etched deep by decades of ingrained prejudice. Celeste didn't respond immediately. She rose slowly, water cascading from her strong, steady frame, like an unspoken declaration. "I'm not hiding. And I'm certainly not asking for permission." Beneath her surface calm, there were deep currents swirling, but not of fear. It was the fatigue of someone who had seen this theater play out 100 times before, and this time she was ready. Not just to defend herself, but to teach the entire neighborhood a lesson about real power. There are battles where the victor isn't the one who shouts the loudest, but the one who knows when to stay silent and let the enemy dig his own grave. Celeste Harper understood this better than anyone. Facing Robert Hale's sputtering fury, she didn't scream. She didn't lash back. She simply tilted her head slightly, her gaze as calm as a glassy lake on a windless day. "Why do you think I'm not allowed here?" The question floated out softly, but beneath its gentleness was a blade sharp enough to slice through any clumsy excuse. Robert hesitated for a brief moment. Then, like a broken record stuck in an old, worn-out song, he repeated the same tired refrain. "Because I know everyone who lives here, and I don't know you. People like you always find ways to sneak into places where you don't belong." Again, "people like you" spilled out of his mouth like a blot of ink, staining the air with its rancid weight. Celeste suppressed a sigh, not from hurt, but from sheer weariness, the exhaustion of someone forced to repeat the same historical lesson to those who refused to learn. Robert, seething, fumbled for his phone, the clumsy anger of a man who had nothing left to cling to but a delusion of authority. "I'm calling the police." Celeste didn't stop him. She didn't plead. She simply stood there, arms relaxed at her sides, her eyes serene, as if she were the one truly orchestrating the entire chess game. A corner of her mouth lifted, not a mocking smile, but the knowing smile of someone who already knew how this story would end. Robert punched in the numbers, his voice ringing out, frantic. "There's a black woman, trespassing at the pool. She's refusing to leave." Every syllable of black woman was weighted, flung like an accusation. Celeste remained silent. There was no need to argue with ignorance that was busy exposing itself. Because she knew, in just a few minutes, the entire neighborhood would witness who truly had the right to stand here. Victory doesn't belong to the one who shouts louder. It belongs to the one who stands stronger in the storm, and Celeste Harper, as always, didn't need a superhero cape or a bombastic slogan. She only needed the truth and an unbreakable resolve. The piercing wail of a patrol car's siren tore through the heavy afternoon air. Eyes leaned out from balconies, half eager, half expectant, awaiting a display of restoring order. They had no idea they were about to witness the collapse of their own illusion. The blue and white SUV screeched to a halt right outside the pool gate. Two officers stepped out, both white. One was short, bald, with shoulders as broad as a brick wall. The other was tall and lanky, moving cautiously, his hand casually hovering near his gun belt. Their eyes quickly scanned toward Celeste, the suspect, and toward Robert Hale, the accuser, now puffing his chest out as if he had just saved the entire neighborhood from some invisible menace. The bald officer stepped forward, voice steady but commanding. "Ma'am, we received a report of unauthorized entry. Please present your ID." Celeste stood tall, her braided hair gleaming under the sunlight. She didn't step back. She didn't falter. She answered with a calm, almost chilling evenness. "No, I will not present ID." Robert gaped, turning frantically toward the officers, gesturing wildly. "See? See? She's refusing. Arrest her!" The lanky officer frowned, exchanging a glance with his partner. For a brief second, confusion flickered in their eyes, because they knew a citizen not being detained is under no obligation to present identification. Celeste, with deliberate slowness, stepped to the pool's edge and pulled a phone from her towel bag. In a practiced motion, she opened her email, scrolled briefly, then turned the phone screen toward the officers. Under the bright sun, a document shone clearly. Property ownership certificate, Maplewood Grove. Celeste lifted her head, her gaze slicing through every trembling layer of prejudice. "I don't live here." She paused just half a beat, letting the words cut through the air like a razor. "I own this place." Silence, heavy, suffocating. You could almost hear the sweat dripping from Robert Hale's forehead. His face went pale, then flushed red, as if his entire body was rejecting the reality before him. The bald officer cleared his throat, glancing at his partner, awaiting a silent cue to retreat. Finally, the lanky officer gave a small, stiff nod. "There's no issue here. Sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am." Robert gaped, trying to form words, but only meaningless noises tumbled out. The eyes from the balconies, those that had earlier watched eagerly for punishment, now quickly averted, as if they were the ones who had committed the crime. Celeste Harper stood there, unmoving, unshaken. No need to shout, no need to beg. All she needed was the truth, and the steely blade of unshakable dignity. There are moments when no accusation is necessary, no verdict required. Only silence, and the gaze of an entire community to utterly destroy a man. Robert Hale stood frozen, eyes wide, mouth agape, grasping desperately for some shred of justification to cling to. But there was none that could save him from the truth that had just been laid bare. The bald officer coughed awkwardly, as if trying to crack the frozen air. Then, in the rare, clumsy shuffle of men used to commanding but now stripped of ground, both officers retreated quietly. No apology, no excuse. Only the silence of those who knew they had stood on the wrong side. From the balconies of Maplewood Grove, the residents, those who, just minutes ago, had sipped tea and whispered judgments, now held their breath, staring down. No one spoke. No one defended Robert. No applause, no murmurs. Only eyes, cold, avoiding, as if watching an ancient statue crumble to dust in the center of their town square. Robert turned toward the open windows, searching desperately for a look of support. But all he found were doors quietly closing, a silent, collective statement. You brought this on yourself. Celeste Harper remained rooted in place. No advancing. No retreating. She didn't need to seize her victory with grand gestures, because the moment she raised that phone screen, victory had already been sealed, irreversible. When Robert finally turned away, his shoulders sagging as if weighed down by stone, the dragging slap of his flip-flops across the concrete sounded almost unbearably sad. But the real sound, the one that would linger far longer than any 911 call, there was absolute silence in the entire neighborhood. A silence of realization. A silence of shame. And for some, a silence marked the beginning of an awakening. In a community that once believed ownership resided not just in deeds and papers, but in skin color. Today, that belief was shattered, right before their eyes. No social media, no camera lenses needed. Only their own eyes would carry this story, retold again and again for years to come. Some people only learn their lesson when the world they know is stripped away right before their eyes. Sadly, Robert Hale was one of them. As the police departed and the heavy silence draped over Maplewood Grove like a damp, suffocating blanket, Celeste Harper stepped forward. Not hurriedly, not in anger, carrying only the cold finality of a judge who had heard enough meaningless pleas. Robert turned, some instinct begging for a final chance. His voice trembled. I have rights. I've lived here for 20 years. I paid my dues. Celeste lifted her hand, a short, razor-sharp gesture that sliced clean through his desperate babbling. She took one more step closer, ensuring every word would strike Robert's ears like hammer blows. Who do you think collects your HOA payments? Robert squinted, confused, as if for a brief moment he couldn't comprehend the question. Celeste tilted her head slightly, her voice sinking lower, emphasizing every syllable. I do. They pay me. I am the owner. I am the one who decides. No need for shouting. No need for courtrooms. Only a simple truth. Real power belongs to those who know when to stay silent and strike at the right moment. Robert stammered, his face flushing deep red. You can't. I'll sue. Celeste allowed one side of her mouth to lift slightly, her eyes glinting. Go ahead. But before you find a lawyer willing to take your case, you might want to start packing. The residents on the balconies, once silent spectators, were no longer mere bystanders. They now understood. The black woman they once doubted. It was the beating heart of this community. Celeste took a step back, casting Robert one final glance. Don't confuse how long you've lived somewhere with a right to look down on others. A simple statement. But in the thick, stifling air of that afternoon at Maplewood Grove, it rang louder than any alarm. Robert bowed his head. No more protests, no more manufactured rage could mask the burning shame consuming him from the inside out. Celeste turned and walked away, the faint slap of her sandals against the cement. But every step, Every beat sounded like a hammer sealing the coffin of an old era. An era where prejudice once masqueraded as law. Some apologies come too late. Some wounds cannot be healed by a few whispered regrets. Robert Hale, who once strutted like the Lord of Maplewood Grove, now it shrank under the harsh afternoon sun. His trembling fingers clutched the fraying hem of his wrinkled Hawaiian shirt like a man about to sink. He stumbled toward Celeste Harper. His voice was rough, choked with a shame that weighed down every word. Please, please don't evict me. I've lived here my whole life. This is my home." A plea, a last tattered scrap of pride, torn apart by reality. Celeste did not move. She simply looked at him, not with hatred, not with anger, but with a cold emptiness, as if Robert Hale had erased himself from her world long ago. She spoke, her voice calm, each word falling like a knife. "I don't give second chances to racists." No shouting. No lengthy explanations, just one sentence. And Robert understood. Every door had closed, not just the door to a house, but the door to mercy itself. Celeste turned and walked away. Her towel swung gently with her steady stride. No one stopped her. No one defended Robert. Even those who once remained silent in the face of his arrogance now coldly turned away. Robert stood alone by the poolside, a broken statue, stripped of any remnants of past pride. The wind swept through Maplewood Grove, carrying distant whispers, but none spoke for Robert anymore. Celeste Harper disappeared behind the black iron gate, leaving behind a community and a man forced to confront the rot inside his own soul. That day, there were no shouts. No cameras, no media coverage, only justice, quiet, profound, and unmistakable. 2 months may not be enough to build an empire, but sometimes 2 months. It's all it takes to tear down walls built over decades of prejudice. Today, under the golden blaze of the late summer sun, Maplewood Grove was no longer the same. The pool, once a silent battleground for unspoken bias, it was now filled with laughter. Families, white, black, Asian, Latin, splashed in the water together, shared lounge chairs, passed around cold cans of soda. No more side glances. No more whispered judgments, just life, simple and equal. The once weathered apartment that had belonged to Robert Hale now had new owners, a young black couple. The wife is an anesthesiologist at the city's largest hospital. The husband is a tech founder, building a rising software company. They didn't need to make declarations. Their confident, brilliant, undeniable presence, it was the most powerful answer to any lingering doubts. And by the corner of the pool, under a cream-colored umbrella, Celeste Harper sat quietly, an iced tea in hand. No speech. No grand proclamation, just a slow, deep smile of contentment. Karma, the most patient artist, had finished painting a masterpiece of justice. Celeste took a sip of her tea, her eyes narrowing slightly under the sun. In a place that once belonged to just a few, now all colors had their rightful space. Not because someone granted them the right, but because they claimed it with unwavering grace and wisdom. Far off, children raced into the pool, water spraying like fireworks, and their laughter echoed across Maplewood Grove, erasing every lingering trace of the old days. Celeste exhaled. But it wasn't a sigh of exhaustion. It was the light, easy breath of someone who knew a small battle had been won. Change comes slowly, but when it arrives, it doesn't ask for permission. Celeste raised her glass, eyes distant, knowing this was only the beginning. Out there, countless other communities, countless other Maplewood Groves, we were waiting for someone to rise and smile, just like she had today. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that justice, though slow, is unstoppable, then don't forget to hit like. Share this video with your loved ones and subscribe to our channel to spread more powerful stories like this. Be part of the change. Let your voice help build a fairer, kinder world. Because sometimes, just one story at the right moment is enough to change an entire generation.